All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking a really fascinating, deeply philosophical text by Xu Feng titled What Kind of Environment Attracts What Kind of Creatures? Now, this piece explores a very specific universal law of attraction, but actually scratch the standard think positive thoughts self-help trope you might be used to. Instead, we're looking at a comprehensive framework arguing that our physical and spiritual environments dictate exactly what and who we attract into our lives. Let's break down exactly how this theory works.
So, to start off, you know how some spaces just feel incredibly vibrant and alive, while others feel, well, totally dead? And on a more personal level, why does it seem like certain people just constantly attract misfortune and bad luck? The source text offers a highly specific, unified answer to both of these questions. It argues that there's a strict, underlying law of attraction governing literally everything, from the birds in your backyard to the everyday encounters you have with other people. And the author brilliantly illustrates where this theory is first grounded with a physical real-world anecdote. Picture this, a massive 2,600 square meter yard at a Canadian headquarters. Back in 2017, this place was heavily covered in debris. The result? 0 birds visited, completely quiet. But in 2018, they did a partial cleanup using a small mower. It wasn't perfect, but that changing environment suddenly attracted a few Canadian geese and crows. Then, in 2019, they went all in. Both yards were completely cleared and mowed to make them entirely green and lush. The transformation was immediate. Over 70 birds at once, including hummingbirds, flocked to this newly cultivated space. This idea is backed up by a second story, this time about a valley in China. Before any renovation, the area was just desolate. But after a year of really intentional cultivation, planting wheat and persimmon trees, and here's the absolute key part, leaving them freely available for the birds to eat rather than hoarding the harvest, the result was undeniable. Endless groups of singing birds settled there year-round. So all of this boils down to one perfectly summarized quote from the text. The types of environments will determine the kinds of creatures who will be attracted to them. What started as, a simple practical gardening observation in a Canadian yard and a Chinese valley is about to be applied as a universal, immutable law of existence. Let's see how this builds. Moving right into Section 1, the rule of attraction in nature and society. The text now scales this whole backyard observation way up into the broader macro world, arguing that this principle governs absolutely all ecological and human systems. It maps out the natural world to prove its point. Specific geographies naturally and inevitably draw in specific creatures. Mountains attract tigers, grasslands attract wolves. Stagnant pools, they bring in crocodiles. And the Gobi Desert naturally attracts lizards. Nature doesn't operate on random chance, right? It operates on environmental compatibility. The setting completely dictates the inhabitants. And here is where the framework takes a really fascinating step, mapping this exact same biological logic directly onto human civilization. Bad emperors create an environment that attracts treacherous villains, while wise emperors attract upright ministers. Galleries naturally pull in artists, just as casinos naturally pull in gamblers. Human institutions, governments, and businesses act exactly like natural ecosystems. They attract the exact kind of people that match the frequency and purpose of that specific setting. Which brings us to Section 2, the spiritual environment. Having established this rule out there in the physical and social worlds, the source material now shifts its focus totally inward, into the abstract realm. The idea here is that our internal, spiritual state operates identically to physical spaces. If your inner environment is cultivated like a beautiful garden of flowers, it naturally attracts beautiful energies, metaphorically, the bees and butterflies. But if your inner world is uncultivated, like a pile of stinky waste, well, it inevitably attracts flies. Your inner state acts as a literal magnet for matching external energies. Building on that metaphor, a very specific metaphysical hierarchy emerges in the text. Phenomena like soul possession are described as real, but strictly governed by this rule of attraction. According to the author, a person who deliberately mystifies things is going to attract ghosts or monsters. Those who casually talk about spirits draw in evil spirits. However, ascending that hierarchy, those who maintain a pure spiritual environment will attract angels and bodhisattvas. And at the very top, an inner environment that is entirely spotless and extraordinary, that attracts gods. The core takeaway here is that spiritual entities are drawn to you based entirely on the purity of your inner landscape. Let's look at Section 3, explaining disasters and misfortunes. All right, we're now going to see a pretty major conceptual leap, scaling this spiritual theory up to explain negative events, both globally and personally. The text makes a bold, absolute claim regarding global catastrophes. It posits that regional natural disasters, things like earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, and plagues, aren't just random geological or biological events. Instead, the author claims they are a direct reflection of a severely flawed collective spiritual environment among the people living in those specific locations. The framework dictates that an environment invites either auspiciousness or disaster, based entirely on the spiritual state of its inhabitants. And this exact same concept is then directed back down to the scale of your personal life. If you find yourself frequently encountering villains, bullies, insults, or just general misfortunes, the text says you shouldn't just blame bad luck or other people. The root cause, your own personal spiritual environment, has become flawed. You're literally attracting these negative encounters because your inner landscape is currently matching their frequency. So how do we address this? That's section 4. Cultivating your soul garden. So if a flawed inner environment causes both personal and global issues, how do we actually fix it? The text gives us some really actionable solutions for changing your inner landscape, which is a lot like planting new seeds in a physical yard. First, love and cherish nature to attract smooth weather. Second, actively hold kind thoughts and deliberately restrain greed to ensure a safe life. Basically, don't harbor thoughts of hurting others. Third, if you want to attract beautiful things, those butterflies we talked about, you must consciously grow flowers in your soul garden. And finally, if you want to attract noble, helpful people into your life, you must practice gratitude. Change your thoughts, and you fundamentally change what you pull into your orbit. This leads us to what I think is one of the most powerful quotes in the text. Absolutely beautiful things can only be enjoyed by absolutely beautiful lives. A fairly blunt analogy is used here, stating that pigs only deserve to live in pig pens, and regular people who don't cultivate their minds are only worthy of struggling in the world of suffering. The main argument is that you simply cannot experience the divine, the beautiful, or the extraordinary until you elevate your inner environment to match that exact frequency. So, what is the ultimate takeaway from this entire framework? It's that our primary life's work should completely shift. Instead of pouring all our time and energy into the standard pursuits of studying, working, or networking, our main task is actually the creation and cultivation of beautiful natural and spiritual environments. The idea is that once you establish the roots of a pure environment, the right path and the right outcomes will just naturally grow from it. I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question to chew on based on this text. If divine beings, immense good fortune, and beautiful experiences are strictly drawn to spaces that match their purity, is the garden of your mind currently a place they would want to visit? Or is it maybe time to start pulling some weeds? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive into the architecture of our environments has given you something totally fascinating to reflect on.